I log into my YouTube TV and my team's Northwestern, and they're playing on Peacock. And it's like, God damn it, I'm already paying $85 a month.
And it's only going to get worse.
The Business of Betting podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. 4 out of the top 5 U.S. operators personalize player experiences with Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/businessofbetting. And if you like what you see, you will get your first month free.
What is up, everybody? I am Jason Trost. Today is episode 237. I'm joined with Mark Phillip, who's been around sports tech for the last 20 years. He's the CEO and founder of MetaBet.io and AreYouWatchingThis.com. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
My pleasure, Jason. Good to see you, my friend.
So let's kick off. You're in Austin, Texas. I've been hearing so much about Austin for the last 5-10 years, and I'd love to get your take on Austin. Is it worth the hype? Is it as nice as it sounds on the outside? I mean, great weather, 0% state tax, burgeoning tech community, which seems to be getting stronger, great airport connection, cost of living's affordable. So what's your take on the life in Austin?
I say there's 5 things in Austin: good food, good drinks. You have working out, good music, and dogs. That's pretty much Austin in 5 steps. I got here when I was 21. I was coming from Boston. I got here in November and it was mid-70s and I fell in love in seconds. It's changed a lot. It's been a juggernaut of an economy. And I think it's, through 2008 financial crisis, even through COVID, it's been really strong, but it's starting to soften a bit, which I'll be honest, most folks in Austin aren't terribly upset about because the growth has been so frenetic. That was what was once a sleepy little town is now the 10th biggest in the country. There's no city in the States I'd rather run a startup. Central Time Zone is the best time zone for sports. I will die on that hill. And I can get to New York, San Francisco, and LA in 3 hours. So it's home.
And what are the downsides?
Downsides. I'm currently in my WeWork at 6th and Congress, and there's a state capitol 6 blocks north that is stunningly beautiful, but sometimes you can feel the evil emanating out of it. We very much try to think of ourselves as a blue dot in a red state, but sometimes it's hard to stick your head in the sand.
And I know that, to your point, Austin has a reputation for being liberal in a otherwise very conservative state. One of my good friends had lived in Austin for 7-8 years, and she's an entrepreneur. And one of the drawbacks she said was that it's a little bit of a good old boy kind of town in a very sort of, traditional conservative kind of vibe. Like, do you feel that as well? Do you think it's a good old boy town for all the bad vibes that brings?
I mean, it's interesting. They always say, if you ever don't like the weather, just wait 15 minutes as the sun starts beaming down on me on a cloudy day. The interesting thing about Austin is the conflict. It's the friction. Austin is a fiercely liberal town on a very conservative backdrop. And when you spark those two together, you have a city where a gay gun rights club makes sense. So there's lots of contradiction and lots of head scratching. There is a good amount of good old boy feel to it. You're going to get that anywhere in a state like Texas. I work with a lot of tech accelerators and organizations that are working to make it more of an inclusive place. But I got here in 2000 and the Black population was right about 8%. We've grown like crazy, and 25 years later, the Black population is about 8%. And so we are diverse in very interesting ways. A big driver of that is UT. You have 50,000 plus people, plus, doctorate, PhD type folks. And that's been a big driver for the tech community as a whole. So it's an interesting, contradictory city that I never imagined growing up in Brooklyn in the 90s that I'd spend half my life here.
And I don't know how much experience you have in other tech hubs like Silicon Valley or something like that. I mean, I went to LA and I lived there for 3 years, and I was kind of trying to find something that was like Silicon Valley adjacent but had normal people in it. I thought San Francisco was a little bit of a monotown, or has become a bit of a monotown. And I liked the fact that LA had its crazy diverse and lots of different industries and stuff like that. How do you feel like what's like tech like in Austin? I know it's the state capital, and also you got UT Austin, which is a major source. Like, how big is tech of the scene in Austin? Is it dominating or a big minority?
It's massive. I mean, this was an interesting aspect of COVID. Austin over-indexes in tech, and it over-indexes in the service community. A lot of that is because you have live music, tourist attractions, South by Southwest, UT football, Formula One, Austin City Limits, all these things. And so when COVID happened and the world shut down, those of us in tech were fine. We started wearing sweatpants and working from home. But all my service industry friends were rocked. So much of this city's economy is based on South by Southwest. And so to lose two of those, if your wait staff is crushing, even if you own a bar, is crushing. A lot of these folks make their whole mortgage during that 1 week, their whole rent during that 1 week of South by Southwest from all the corporations that come in and all the different events. So tech is massive here, but I think over the past few years, it's bifurcated a little bit more. As life has been as easy as it has been for tech people because we're malleable. We can work from anywhere. We can work from our couch. Austin, and I think a lot of cities, are struggling with that relationship with tech when you have this massive wealth creation and other people get left behind because sweatpants at the kitchen table doesn't work for them over Zoom.
Great. Well, let's pivot to sports and the sports media scans. I don't know if that was a elegant transition, but there you go. So I think we're about the same age. I'm 44.
47.
47. So generationally, I think we're like very close. Like, you were a baseball fan. I remember when I was a kid, baseball was king. And it's been interesting, like when we were kids, like you had to get the score from the newspaper, and now, you get a text alert coming like 23 milliseconds after the score is done. And I'm going to put it forward a hypothesis, and I'm curious to get your thought. When we were kids, there wasn't much to do besides, you could go to the movies, you could go to the mall, you could run around with your friends, but then you could also watch sports. And now the media landscape there's so many different ways that you can entertain yourself. I mean, you got every movie you could ever want with Netflix. People travel a lot more than they used to. There's so many different interesting computer games. I mean, when we were kids, like it was like Mario Brothers, you had Mario Brothers and like Duck Hunt, right? Like
it was mind blowing.
And it was awesome. It was awesome. There wasn't even that many computer games that you could play, or like Pac-Man or something. And now it's just like, I saw Civ 7 is coming out. I'm like, I want to play Civ 7 for 300 hours. When we were kids, there weren't that many games that you could play for hundreds of hours without spending millions and quarters and all that kind of stuff. I guess where I'm going with this is like, people have infinite choice now. Attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. People are on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. What do you think is going on? Like, do you think there's going to be an enduring popularity to sports, and like the Generation Z is going to continue that mantle that we had? Or do you think it's going to die with Generation X, which we're a part of, because we're kind of the last generation that grew up with sports being part of our daily diet?
It's a really interesting question. I was talking with a buddy of mine. We spent a lot of time together in our early 20s, and we were talking about, we would be out at a bar and we'd do trivia. Name this actor that was in whatever. And sometimes we'd get, but sometimes we wouldn't. But now, in my pocket, tinier than any computer that I've ever owned, I have access to all of the knowledge in the entire universe. And the idea of saying the phrase, I don't know, has kind of disappeared. Because we always have access to infinite knowledge, and it's hard not to instinctively grab for your phone when there's something that you don't have on the tip of your tongue. And so for me, my take on that is we have infinite choice in the same way that we have infinite knowledge and infinite options of things that we can watch or stream at any time. And a lot of that is the reason why I think the company that we built exists. I don't want to sit down and watch a 4-hour baseball game. Maybe I would have in high school, but I'm not going to do it now. Part of that is, you get older, things change, responsibilities change. But also when I know there's so many other things I could watch at any given moment, it's harder to dedicate all of my time to something in really targeted, distinct, ongoing sort of way. And so I think as we get into more clips, as we see more Gen Z folks caring more about highlights and maybe the tip off to the final buzzer, that sports leagues, media properties, and sports books have to lean in and realize, look, I might only get this person for 3 minutes. How can I make sure that they love the experience that they have? I might get this person only on Tuesday nights. How can I figure out what to give them on that Tuesday night where their kid has soccer practice and they had a little bit of a window? What can I give them on a silver platter where they know they're going to enjoy it? Because you know what? Sometimes doom scrolling on Instagram doesn't feel terrible. In the moment, I might hate myself an hour later, but making sure you give someone that guaranteed, here's great live content that no one in the world has seen before. It's a tie game with 30 seconds to go, and in 3 minutes, you can go back to whatever you were doing. I think that has to be the minimum for folks when we're talking about live sport.
So your hypothesis is that our attention span is going to continue to degrade, and the content provider's job is to figure out ways to get more compelling content in shorter windows. Is that, and get it in the front of the right people at the right time? Is that kind of your hypothesis?
Yes. I mean, not to get too far out of field as an unmarried man in my mid-40s, but I mean, we look at the research of dating. I mean, so often you rewind decades, the person you married probably lived within a few blocks of you. But now when you have infinite choice, when you can download an app and swipe left or right seemingly infinitely, that having, I won't say too much choice because that's a strong term, having infinitely more choice, or at least feeling like it's infinite, changes your interaction with choosing a mate or choosing a bit of content to watch for 2 hours and deciding how, this is getting a little far off field, but how committed you're going to be to that content and how long you want to stay with it before just switching to something else.
So in the sports world, I mean, I think the NFL is at peak valuation now. And I know the NBA is struggling a little bit, but they're still like doing pretty well monetarily. And if you look at the other, like MLS is doing really well. And, you know, there seems to be a new crop of billionaires that want to keep investing in it. And for now, they're able to keep signing these crazy TV deals that pay the bills. But I feel like it's going to come unwound at some point just because nobody's paying for ESPN anymore. Nobody pays for ESPN. ESPN's not signing a X billion-dollar deal with the NBA, and it'll all trickle down, and sort of the landscape of sports is going to fall apart. So do you agree with that? Like, or do you think that this micro-targeting of the moments in the game is going to keep enough people interested and find ways of monetization that the gravy train's going to continue in professional sports?
The gravy train's too delicious. It's going to keep doing its thing. But I think we need to be thinking about Apple TV and MLS a little bit more. I would stumble onto MLS every once in a while in the past few years. Austin FC came to town. It was the first professional team in Austin outside of UT football. And everyone loved it. Everyone would watch. It would just be on ESPN or Fox or whatever. The MLS Cup happened last year. I worked in sports and I had no idea it was even happening. So Apple TV backs up the Brinks truck to MLS and like, hey, we want everything. Here's a big load of cash. But what has that done to fandom? I mean, it's great that these rights are going up and up and up. It means that there's more money going around for folks like us in the sports industry to get into. Sports gambling is going to go up. Everyone's happy. But none of this works without the passion of the fan. And so if someone comes in with $1 billion to get the rights to something, but then no one signs up for the service, what's the value of that $1 billion to the league? If you have no fans, you don't have a league. So I think we're going to see more fragmentation. I think that's inevitable. There's too much money not to. But there's going to be, I think, a rot, the core of some of these leagues that splinter themselves out too much. Because if your fans can't watch, your fans can't wager emotion. If they're not wagering emotion, they're not going to care about what you do.
Speaking of that, which I think is what one of your products addresses, like just trying to figure out what network to watch your damn game on is so infuriating. And, you know, I live in London, so I pay for a YouTube TV. I use it with a VPN because they don't allow me to use it over here, which is another thing. But anyway, I log into my YouTube TV and my team's Northwestern, and they're playing on fucking Peacock, and it's like, God damn it, I'm already paying $85 a month to watch. Like, it's infuriating.
100%. And it's only going to get worse.
Talk about that problem. So, like, not only are our attention spans decreasing, like the content providers are going out of their way to making it hard to watch these things.
It sometimes feels impossible. Sometimes I just want to watch Messi, and I know he's playing, and okay, Apple TV, okay, maybe it's over there, or is it a special cup game? Is it on Peacock? Is it on Paramount? It shouldn't be this hard. I shouldn't walk into a Buffalo Wild Wings and see ESPN News on three TVs when I know there's a no-hitter on an RSN that's not being shown anywhere. It's too hard to figure out where to watch things. But just like the Apple TV deal, it's inevitable and it's going to keep on happening. We saw ESPN launch a tool called Where to Watch last fall. And it's interesting. It does a little bit of what we need of, I just want to watch this team, tell me how to do it. But there's no curation involved. It doesn't tell you, out of the hundreds of games on the ESPN Plus family, these are the 3 that are most interesting. And even if you add scores, like that's not enough. I think you think about soccer. You could have a 0-0 match that's absolutely boring. Or you could have Brazil, Mexico. I think it was the 2014 World Cup. It was the opening match. And Ochoa, the Mexican goalie, was standing on his head. He had like 18 or 20 saves or something like that. It was a 0-0 match, but it was thrilling. And so much of finding the great game is important. And folks are getting that way. ESPN has launched something. Apple just launched something like it as well. But the next step has to be curation, because there's so many games going on that, yes, if you want to watch Northwestern, sure, just tell me where it is. But on a college football Saturday, when there's 500 games going on at once, people need more of a nudge than that.
Well, going back to your example of, I think you had a basketball example, like it's, there's 30 seconds left and tune in now. Like I get that. But if you take basketball as a specific example, often the last 30 seconds takes 20 minutes because of the stupid ads that they put in there and all the timeouts and all that kind of stuff. So like, how would you solve that problem? So like you have your Gen Zer, they're doom scrolling on Instagram and freaking out about TikTok getting banned, and they're biting their nails because they're super anxious. And you send them some alert, be like, hey, check out UT Austin. There's 10 seconds left. And, like it's not going to be resolved in like the last 9 minutes. Like, do you think that they'll stay, or like, how do you know when to send that alert? And
we built some tech a few years ago for a customer, a big satellite company, where they wanted us to predict how long a game was going to run. It was for some legacy DVR stuff, and their overages weren't recording long enough. And so we started building out almost like a GPS for when a game's going to end. And so that's actually a big part of what we do, because if you look sort of through the other end of the telescope, sometimes it's not about what to watch. Sometimes it's, hey, I got 10 minutes before I have to leave. Give me 10 minutes of something interesting. And so sometimes that's 30 seconds to go in an NBA game might fill that 10 seconds. Or maybe it's penalty kicks about to start. Or maybe it's a soccer match in the 83rd minute. That might run another 10 minutes as well. So understanding this, hard to grasp at times event, there's no other genre on TV that you never know when it's actually going to end the broadcast. Everything has a schedule except sports, and it doesn't care about.
Maybe the Oscars, they run long sometimes.
They run long sometimes even. So, anything we can do to sort of wrangle that, there's value there.
So maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but on YouTube TV, they have this, God, I'm blanking on the name of the feature, but basically it shows you the key plays, and you can either watch in the beginning or watch the key plays. Do you know, is a human deciding what a key play is and gating that, or do they have a computer do that?
My guess is it's coming from their sports data providers. I don't know for sure, but often when I look at those key plays, I'm a YouTube TV guy also. I see a lot of them as basically, if you're watching a soccer match, it's shots on goal, goals, penalties, rinse and repeat. I think there could be more subtlety there, but I haven't seen anyone with a really good algorithm around that yet. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, because in basketball, it's kind of like, there's 50 baskets a game. Like, how do you decide what, soccer's easy because you score a goal or something. But like, which slam dunk do you show?
Exactly. And can a computer figure out that the ball went between his legs or not? I mean, there's so many things there.
Pivoting to sports betting, when we were prepping for this show, you were talking about how minus 110 shuts a lot of people out. And even though I've been in the industry for 17 years, I barely know what minus 110 means. So what is the solution to that? So the working solution I always had is that it should be percentages and you should tell people how much they win or lose. What's your hypothesis on how do you demystify sports betting odds to make it more generally acceptable to a wider audience?
I'm the same way when it comes to minus 110s and plus 250s. I was a math major before I got to, I think, linear algebra and then ran away kicking and screaming. But I feel like I have a good brain for math, and I still get confused by these odds. And, it's American style odds. We're the only country that really uses this method. To me, if I could wave a magic wand, or if I could empower every UX person in every sports book around the globe, for me, it's if I bet $1, what am I going to win? For me, it is, I want to see $1.50, $4.62. Even if instead of minus 110, if we just put plus 91, that alone makes it so much easier to understand. Because if I saw a plus 91, I know if I bet $100, I'm going to win 191. But the minus 110 is, I think, where it gets really, really hard. Minus 120 is where it gets more tricky. So for me, I think too much of the American sports landscape, whether it's gambling or sports media in general, is focused on the top edge of the bell curve. And that middle 60% of folks, I think we talk over their heads. I think when you install an app and it asks you to choose your favorite teams, yes, I like the Yankees, I like the Knicks, but I'll watch the Warriors. I think the Colts are interesting every once in a while, but there's not an appreciation for the granularity, the subtlety of sports. Like, it's not binary. It's not yes or no. And so I think that there's a lot of focusing on, here's my team, I'm a diehard, I'm a pro sharp, but not enough in the, hey, I'm going to make this easy for you. Here's the team that you went to, that represents your college. Bet $1, you're going to win 3. Let's get started.
What direction would you like to see the sports betting industry work towards?
I think that there is so much fun in sports. I remember where I was when Leitner hit that shot. I remember where I was when Boone hit that home run at a very grimy bar on 6th Street, just a few blocks away from here. There's something unique and special about that, and I think that's lost sometimes. If you go to any sportsbook website, you open it up, and it's like you're in Google Sheets. It's rows and columns and numbers and language that you may or may not understand. But if there was a way to say, look, there's a no-hitter through 8 that's not on your radar. Do you want to place a wager on it? If this pitcher's going to get the last 3 outs, or there's a huge comeback, or there was a fight here. There's so much talk about micro betting, and most of it's cool. But if I have thousands of bets for an individual game, and the second Saturday of November is always the busiest day of the year, I've seen as many as 650 games on the second Saturday of November. You do the math and have an insane amount of bets, but there's no one saying, hey, here's the 5 that are actually going to be interesting. And yes, there's lots of AI startups, and most of them are smoke and mirrors. We need to get to the point where we're focusing on the reason why we like sports in the first place. Let the shops do what they do. But the opportunity, I think, is in that middle 6% of the bell curve.
I know exactly what you mean. And, the sort of the magic of sports gets lost in sports betting websites, and we're guilty of that too. And you try to think, like, how do you bring that to life? But when you look at non-sports betting websites, whether it's ESPN or like one of the decent-ish examples is maybe the PGA app, but I have not seen a lot of non-sporting betting applications, content providers bring that magic of sports to life besides just having traditional content that's writing about the exciting moment in the sport. Can you cite a few apps that you think stand out to capture that magic of screaming when the 3-point swishes the net?
I wish I could. I mean, there's some startups that are trying some things, but if I worked at a sports book, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd get them to carve out $10 million, get 6 interesting entrepreneurs to build a new sportsbook brand from scratch. And I know that sounds a little wacky, but let's take DraftKings just hypothetically. Take DraftKings, back it with the same lines, back it with the same liquidity, everything stays the same. Just change the UX to something that is more fan-centric. I mean, I won't say make it like TikTok because that's glib, but get me highlights, get me social posts, and then get me wagers integrated. Don't make me search through numbers to figure out what connects with me. Connect with me first. Know that I love these players. Get me that player, and then show me the line for the game that they're about to tip off in. I'd love to see a sports book have the guts, for lack of a better term, to flip things on its head. Because everyone's doing the same thing. If you took the colors and the logos away from every sportsbook app and every sportsbook website, you couldn't tell them apart. And that's disappointing. I want to see somebody take a risk.
I hear you. I want to take that risk. I just don't know what to do.
Use my data.
Maybe that is the solution.
Well, sometimes it's hard to tell if you're crazy or if the emperor really isn't wearing any clothes. But ask me in a few years.
Yeah, well, I sort of take comfort in the fact that traditional sports sites are boring too. Like my main sporting site, you might be the same because we're kind of the same generations. Yahoo Sports. I still like Yahoo Sports. Like I
Classic.
still go to. It's kind of like glued into my DNA that I go to Yahoo. I use it as my homepage all the time, and it's such a dinosaur of a tech company. But you get into these patterns, and that's the place I go for sports. But it's quite boring. It's basically scores and sports stores.
The old recliner in your living room, like you know exactly how it's going to feel. Changes every once in a while, but it's always familiar.
Before I let you go, we have a tradition on this show to ask people, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I'm still trying to figure it out. But for me, my goal is to change the way folks interact with sports. It's gotten too hard. And I've been rolling the same rock up the hill for a good 18 years, trying to change it. And so if I'm remembered for anything, or if I'm known for anything, it's about bringing more joy, helping people find more joy in sports. The one thing I'll never forget, for a quick story, I was at MIT Sloan a bunch of years ago, and a father and son came up to me, and the dad said, because of your app and your analytics, my son got to watch his first no-hitter live. And that was the coolest thing, and I'll never forget it. And for me, that's all I'm striving for.
That's very cool. I don't know if I've ever seen a no-hitter live, so that could be on my bucket list too. Well, if this sports tech thing doesn't work out for you, I highly recommend you narrate children's books. You have a great voice. Have you ever thought about narrating books?
No, I mean, my friends always tell me I have a face for radio, but no, I've never tried.
You have a voice for radio. You have a great voice, and I think I'd love to listen to you. Read me a story. Help me sleep.
Sounds good. We'll see if hopefully people don't get put to sleep during the podcast.
All right, Mark. Well, thanks for stopping by. Good luck with your businesses, and talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Jason. Be good.
The Business of Betting podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. 4 out of the top 5 U.S. operators personalize player experiences with Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/businessofbetting. And if you like what you see, you will get your first month free.